Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful October the 26th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we're working out of that comatose weekend of watching college and professional football. We had a plethora of exciting games, nail biters that came down to that last-second kick. But I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They always make sure they're walking a tight wire and get the job done.
They're always doing a great job, Big C. I want to say, I'm telling you, man, this show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars always be arriving. Big C all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you won't. If that makes sense to you, Big C, I love pausing. In fact, I've been pausing even more over the last couple of days because it's a good thing. But I will never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. You know, they really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, our veterans need all the help that they can get when they're trying to assimilate back to society. We lose some 24 veterans a day, Charlton, to suicide.
Yeah.
An horrific pandemic disease that has stricken them long before COVID-19 came along, Charlton.
Yeah.
We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number to hopefully help those veterans. We need that to become more of a staple in an American institution, that people are willing to give these veterans some type of help, especially through the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number.
Yeah.
We have veterans that are homeless, destitute, mentally and physically. And even though we have this COVID-19, we've had some 70,000 veterans affected by COVID-19. And over 11,000 veterans have died from COVID-19.
Yeah.
But this pandemic of suicide that has been killing veterans for decades is something that America also needs to address.
Yeah.
And as we become a society that's wrapped up and involved in all our own personal problems, think about those who allowed us to have that situation to go through, and think about our great veterans of the United States. So please, if you get a chance, don't hesitate in giving out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number.
Just make the call. Very well said. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. You could definitely get some veterans some help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as a home run leader, Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country. Put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it, and sports teams are doing it now. Big C, watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can get some help. Also, all around the world, if you know you have in your hand the power to affect the universe and the information that comes to you, if you hold your tablet and just say, play Big C Sports Podcast, you will see our app pop up, whether it's on iHeartRadio Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. There's so many apps that are out there. and simply download the app, and you can hear Big C's thoughts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Also, want to make sure, Big C, they're saying that we already have almost 80 million people that have cast their ballots before the election. And that's we're still a week and a day away from that. Text VOTE to 26797 and get registered. That's text the word VOTE to 26797. Tell them Big C and the NFL said vote. It's so important. Have you noticed how much enthusiasm there's been for people all over this country, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Americans need to understand it's up to them to make a decision about their future.
Yeah.
They cannot just sit around idle on the sideline and complain. I mean, the call to action to take over that American institution of voting that people have fought so hard for over the decades, you should always be enthusiastic about that.
Yeah, and I want to ask you something, because I know they're trying to get Amy Coney Barrett sworn in. I haven't really seen much. I think they were having some type of delay, and I know that's whatever they're going to do, they're going to get that done. And whether everybody votes for it, it'd be nice if Chief Justice John Roberts said, no, we're not going to do it, we're going to wait for the election. How does the Supreme Court go forward? We know Donald Trump is a crook, and crooks don't stop robbing banks until they get caught and handcuffed, Big C. But how is the Supreme Court supposed to say to the American electorate, Big C, we're going to do things right now, even though nearly 80 million of you have already voted? We're not going to wait until we see who you voted for, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Supreme Court has no say-so in this. They're all appointees. So this is a political appointee. And as I keep telling you, everybody keeps thinking about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a distraction. He's been a distraction, deflecting everything that the United States Senate has done for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
As Donald Trump goes out there and changes the news cycle every 2 weeks, the Supreme Court has been behind the scenes doing all of what they wanted to do as far as changing how America will be constructed over the next 30, 40 years from a legal perspective, from the judicial branch, Charlton.
Yeah.
They don't care about Donald Trump. If you look at the Supreme Court and you look at the Senate had an opportunity to get rid of Donald Trump through impeachment. They chose not to because he distracted America from what their agenda was, what the Republican agenda was. And he's done a great job of it. Even if he doesn't get reelected, the Republican agenda has already been put in place for the next 4 decades.
Yeah, well, they're already working on that. Vice President Mike Pence, for the next 8 days anyway, he's had 5 of his aides test positive for COVID-19. And it's ironic, Big C. They're saying he tests negative. They're saying Mark Short, Chief of Staff, tests positive. Zach Bauer, his aide, tests positive. And then there's an unidentified staffer that tests positive. How do you have an unidentified staffer if you're next to the Vice President? And there's Mike Oberstein. He's an outside advisor. He tests positive. And there's another unidentified staffer that tests positive. How can you be unidentified if you get anywhere near those guys, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the whole thing about the administration lying, Charlton, for the last 4 years, this is just another lie.
Yeah, it's just another lie, and that's why people got to get out and vote. It's 8 days away, and I want to say happy birthday to one of the best guys in the universe that I know of. So I really want to say congratulations to you on that, Big C. But let me ask you also, because I know a lot of our sports brethren, they've been what I was watching Malcolm X. He said, "You've been hoodwinked, you've been bamboozled." And I see a lot of our sports brethren, they still argue about who's bigger, stronger, and faster. And they've been told they can't use both sides of the brain. But I want to just bring this up because it's so important. This happening right now in front of our eyes. It's not about what Tom Brady did. It's not about what happened with the New York Jets almost getting beaten and shut out again. But Trump is behind Joe Biden in the national polls in the swing states, Big C. Republican senators rushing the Supreme Court Justice nominee Amy Coney Barrett. And the thought is, and I think it's not new, that POTUS is going to challenge the election process in the hopes that Amy Coney Barrett can do what happened down to George Bush, and also when he was running for office down in Florida, they had the thing where they pushed it through anyway. I don't think it's going to happen this time, but they're going to try that, Big C. Your thoughts? It was Al Gore.
Well, if it's a decisive victory, Charlton, that will not come into play.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so imperative that everyone gets out and votes, so it doesn't come down to where you can potentially utilize the Supreme Court in a decision.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that's the case. I want to ask you one more thing before we get into what happened over the weekend in football, because I'm really intrigued by this. I know they're saying this was the biggest vote in the history of the universe, at least in the United States. In California, I think in Los Angeles, they had record turnout in Los Angeles. Now, we're not a swing state, but down south, I think I've seen almost every time I watch television, there are lines and lines of people. And Big C, they're black and white. So I just want to get your feeling, has more people been turned on or turned off by what's happening? Your thoughts?
Well, right now you've exceeded all of the early voting that happened in 2016. But the thing you really need to understand, Charlton, when you look at the political arena, is that when you look at a state like California, you look at a state like Florida, you have to realize that states like North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Kansas, they have as much political power as those states do.
Yeah,
because it comes down to the electoral votes, Charlton, that these states produce. California can have 50 million residents. Wyoming can have 1 million. But it has as much political power as California. So you can't just sit there and be dissuaded by the number of voters that you see in particular states. Because it's the cumulus that makes a difference when it comes down to the electoral college.
The electoral college are the swing states that will decide the presidency of the United States. And if POTUS gets his way, he's hoping that Amy Coney Barrett is a swing state vote, if that makes sense to you. Big C, I know that football was big. The Dodgers, I was out shopping just the other day, and there's a guy that had he had an LA Dodgers hat on, and he had a Chicago Cubs shirt on, a jersey on, but he's pulling for the Dodgers, so congratulations. I know they have to win it if they can, at least on tomorrow night or on Tuesday night, so Tommy Lasorda can finally be happy with Roberts down there in Southern California, and Ben Scully. It'd be great if Ben Scully could do at least a PSA. That's my opinion, but that's too biased for the West Coast. I want to get into what happened on Sunday and NFL football. Big C's thoughts on big teams making big-time plays with big-time players. And when you think about it, nobody has a lot nice to say about any more teams in the NFL. When you have the Eagles and you have the Giants in the game, and I know we've had so many injuries, which really even hurts even more in my opinion, Big C. Odell Beckham, he's out for the season, and a lot of guys have gotten hurt, and I don't know if because we haven't had preseason, or what would you attribute to so many players being injured now, Big C? Your thoughts?
What I take the attribution to injuries in the players, Charlton, is I paid attention to the tackling and how a lot of these lower leg injuries have occurred is because players don't hit anymore. The reason for these injuries because they're trying to grab players by the shoulder pads. They're trying to wrap them up, swing their bodies around, and pull them down. And that's causing feet to get locked in the turf, whether it's grass or astroturf. And this is what has caused a lot of the leg injuries. It's the torque that they're putting on the player that's being tackled that's attributing to this. You think about in the old days, Charlton, when you lit somebody's butt up, you didn't worry about where their foot was. If you hit him in the legs or if you hit him in the chest or in the head, you just went in for the kill shot. Now, because you got penalties that you'll get if you hit a player with targeting and all these things that they're talking about, they're trying to take out of the game. That's what's attributing to all these lower leg injuries.
Well, let's start off with Washington football team. I still want to call them the Red Tails. And the Dallas Cowboys. It was 25-3 a beatdown. And you have Landon Collins, who had a horrific hit, in my opinion, on the quarterback Andy Dalton. He was already giving himself up going to the ground, and people noticed that. But I also noticed no one came over to the defense of Andy Dalton. Washington looked like a different team against the Cowboys, and it seems like the Cowboys, in my opinion, maybe if someone could say that a team has given up, Big C, they seem like a team that's given up. You have Antonio Gibson at 20 carries, 128 yards and a touchdown, and with Dalton being knocked out, and it seems like Dallas has just given up, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it was actually the linebacker Bostic that hit him. But the Cowboys are nothing of a team. We went into this game talking about how horrific their defense was, that the defense through 6 games had given up more points than any team in NFL history since the merger. So they could not play defense. And we know how inept that the Washington football team's offense is. And Dallas could not have an answer for that. I don't know if you say they've given up, But what I see on Dallas is a lack of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
That the team was bad prior to Dak Prescott's injury. But once they lost Dak Prescott, they lost all hope of being able to compete. The offensive line is a shell of what it was 3 years ago. There are no starters right now that was in this game that was left on the offensive line from 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Ezekiel Elliott doesn't get any playing time. Andy Dalton is not a starting NFL quarterback. He's just a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
And this team, you can cancel Christmas for them because they won't be getting anything.
They won't be getting anything. I feel for the Cowboys. They have such a pretty star on the side of their helmet, but they don't play like stars at all. They play like they wish the season would have been canceled, like a lot of the guys that held out on COVID-19. I want to run up to another state of Texas, Big C. It was the Houston Texans, and they just can't find anything good, Big C. The Packers jumped all over them. They had a nice rebound game. It was 35-20 down there in Texas. Devontae Adams, 17. I mean, think about this, brother. He's amazing. I think he's had one of his biggest days as a Packer. Rodgers finished with 283 passing yards. Adams, 13 catches, 196 yards, looking like Jerry Rice. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, everyone wanted to be critical of Aaron Rodgers 2 weeks ago in the loss down in Tampa Bay. And Aaron told him, it's just one game out of 16.
Yeah.
This happens throughout the season to everybody. But when you look at this Houston Texas team, Bill O'Brien left the coverage there. On the defensive side of the ball, they have not been the team that they were 3 years ago. I mean, this defense has gotten old. And that's what a lot of people don't understand about the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
He also robbed Deshaun Watson of his critical weapons when he shipped Hopkins off to Arizona.
Yeah.
So the Texans are what they are. They are a team that is not productive on defense. They can't stop anybody. But when you look at Aaron Rodgers, he's been himself all year long. He had the one hiccup down in Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Threw a couple of picks. But he rebounded the next week, and he's the Aaron Rodgers that we saw in the first 4 weeks of the season, and he's back on stride having an all-pro performance again.
Yeah, he's doing his thing. I mean, you had one beat down, and then they get back on the saddle again, and that can happen when you go down in Texas. Big C, another game, and I'm starting to feel bad for media. Who your friend Mel Kiper and Todd McShay, how they keep telling the whole sports universe, wet quarterback to drop out of college, and they have your friend. He's not your friend. He came out of USC Trojan, not having a lot of success though, and I know he's just not. Darnold's not up for the job, and if the Jets are not up for the job, I'm not just going to blame him. The Jets are winless after 7 weeks. The Bills used field goals to pick up their 5th win of the season. Josh Allen had 30 of 43 passing, 307 yards, and Cole Beasley had 11 catches, 112 yards, which almost doubled what the Cowboys had. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I thought you had that fat head post of it in your living room, the way you were in love with the guy. And I told you when he came out of USC, he wasn't ready for prime time, and he's proven that. I mean, this is a guy who, you talk about skittish and not having figured things out. Sam Darnold, the Jets should have left him on the bench and kept, the backup quarterback in there. At least he might have gotten some points.
Yeah.
But this is a team that only had 8 yards of offense in the second half. You got to realize how bad you are when you only have 8 yards of offense in the half of a game. You get that on one running play or one passing play.
Yeah.
But that's all they had.
Yeah.
I mean, it was surprising that they were up and they scored a game. I thought it was a typo.
Yeah.
That the Jets had scored. But the Buffalo Bills, you talked about Josh Allen, the quarterback of the Bills.
Yeah.
That after first 3 weeks of the season, everybody had him in the MVP conversation.
Right.
Now he's got to figure out what is he going to do since then, because it went to his head.
Yeah.
The Bills got hit against the Jets. I thought this would be the Jets getting their first win on the season, but I guess when you talk about Adam Gase, the head coach, that he's trying to go 0-16 on the season.
Yeah. They're trying to do it. They're trying to go 0-something. It's all fair level war, but I don't know if it's going to happen because they might look up and beat somebody. Even a blind squirrel gets a nut every now and then, from what I understand. Big C, I want to look at another game that I thought it was like ripe for the pickings. It was an excellent game. The New Orleans Saints 27, the Carolina Panthers 24, and the Saints kicked a field goal in the fourth quarter to take a 3-point lead and never looked back. Drew Brees 29-36, 287 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. And the Panthers receiver DJ Moore had 4 catches, 93 yards, and 2 scores. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this was an excellent competitive divisional game.
Yeah.
And I thought that Carolina would come in and win this game. Too many mistakes, though, by the Panthers. Drew Brees did what he needed to do in critical time.
Yeah.
He hit his open receivers. I thought him being without his top 2 receivers going into the game, Charlton, would cause some problems for the Saints. But they were able to recover, even though they did lose another receiver during the game.
Yeah.
But Alvin Kamara showed his worth in this game. You know, almost 200 all-purpose yards for Alvin Kamara in the game. He was the difference.
Yeah.
Teddy Bridgewater did all he can, but the game hinged on a 65-yard field goal attempt by the Carolina Panthers as time ran out, and the kick went 64.5 yards. It just missed the bottom of the goal post, and that was the difference in the game. But an excellent divisional game between these two opponents.
Yeah, I really look forward to seeing if they ever decide to do the same thing and have that same kind of game when they go over to Carolina and play the game. I want to bring it to what I thought was the game of the week, and there were a lot of them that were potentially the game of the week. But I go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Steel Curtain Part 2, my opinion, not trying to be disrespectful to the team that has Hall of Famers across the front four. The Steelers 27, the Titans 24. The Steelers jumped out to a big lead, but I thought it could have been a more of a wide lead. The Big Ben didn't have the greatest game through 3 interceptions, but there were times when it just seemed like Tennessee was a little bit listless. I think they're playing the 3rd game in 13 or 14 days, so they came back late, but they've been doing that all year. Big Ben, 2 touchdown passes. They remain undefeated, and then you have wide receiver A.J. Brown had 6 catches, 153 yards, and a touchdown. The Steelers look really, really good, at least in the first 3 quarters. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, but the Tennessee Titans did what they needed to do in this game and shut down the critical parts of Pittsburgh's offense. They shut down Claypool, the rookie wide receiver who had been carrying up the lead. He only had 1 reception for -2 yards.
Yeah.
The biggest difference in this game, Charlton, came down to James Conner and Benny Snell. Like I said, the running backs for the Steelers.
Yeah.
They were able to dominate the game on the ground. It showed that Ben could have a lackluster game, and they could still control the game offensively. But then defense for the Steelers is what you really need to tout.
Yeah.
They laid some licks on Derrick Henry, so you're not the only one that can thump people. And they held him in check, and that's something that has not been done to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
But when you think about Ryan Tannehill, he's still playing at all-star status. The difference in this game came down to Gronkowski missing a field goal, a chip shot technique when you look at the kicker, a 45-yard field goal that he faded to the right that would have tied up the game in overtime, but he missed that field goal, and the Steelers were able to squeak out with a win.
Yeah.
But even with a win, are the Steelers still a better team than the Titans?
I would say because they did it on the road and a win is a win, yes. I thought going into halftime, Big Ben tried to throw it to the end zone. They could have thrown a 5 or 10 yard out to pick up more yards to get a field goal. But you know those games are tightly competed against. Great coaching, Vrabel on one side of the field, and then you know the Steelers are going to have everything that they get out of what they have with their coaching staff, Big C and Tomlin. But I really thought it was about, like you said, they were hitting Henry at the line of scrimmage. They didn't let him get downfield to give the great forearms that he was doing. So congratulations on the Steelers going into a tough place to win, and they got it done. I'm going to take you up to the state of Ohio. We called it the Big C Bowl, Big C, with the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Browns got to win 37-34 over the Bengals. They lose Odell Beckham, which is a shame because he's such a dynamic player. Even though some people think they're better without him, I disagree with that at all. Baker Mayfield bounced back through a game-winning touchdown pass to Donovan Peoples-Jones to win the game, and Cleveland was able to withstand Joe Burrow's 406 passing yards. He's a rookie, Big C, and 3 touchdowns, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, you got to admire Joe Burrow's performance in this game.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he did all that he could to keep his team in the game and even give them the lead late in the game.
Yeah.
But you have to fault the Cincinnati defense late in the game to allow Cleveland to drive down the field in the last minute of the game and get the game-winning touchdown with less than 30 seconds to go in the game.
Yeah.
So you don't fault the offense of the Cincinnati Bengals. And you did mention that they lost Odell Beckham. I think that benefited the Cleveland Browns when they lost Odell Beckham because now you take a lot of pressure off of Baker Mayfield, and when he comes out of the huddle he has to know where number 13 is lined up and trying to get him incorporated in the passing offense.
Yeah.
You think about, other than the spike that Baker Mayfield had, he had 22 consecutive completions.
Yeah.
And when you look at the receivers that he was going to, he wasn't going to big-name receivers. He was going to the guys that were open.
Yeah.
And so without having Odell Beckham in the lineup, this allows him a comfort zone of not having pressure of a big-name, big-mouth receiver that wants the ball all the time.
Yeah.
And so you watch Baker Mayfield's maturation without Odell Beckham in the lineup.
You think he was playing tight? I mean, Jerry Rice wanted the ball from Joe Montana and Steve Young. Michael Irvin wanted the ball from Troy Aikman. I mean, a lot of guys. Randy Moss always wanted the football when he played.
But how many times did you see these guys running their mouth about wanting the ball? When you talked about Jerry Rice was always open. Nobody could cover Randy Moss. So when you talk about a superstar receiver that doesn't have to say anything and gets the ball because he's the best guy on the field, Cleveland's offense runs through their running game, not being distracted by a receiver. You're going to tell me that Odell Beckham would have had a better game than any one of those receivers that were catching the balls on Sunday?
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens if it turns him around. He's a dynamic player, and I've always seen guys complaining about not getting enough passes. But it's all fair in love and war. Big C, again, I feel for Arthur Blank. You know, they say money can't buy you love. That's wrong. I know a lot of guys with a lot of money, and they date women that look like they're 20 years younger, but it's all fair in love and war. The Lions, they went into a cage, and they ate the Falcons' lunch 23-22. It was what they call a timing error. The Falcons, I just feel bad for Arthur Blank. He came down on the sideline when he thought they were going to win. And for some reason, maybe the players start looking at Arthur Blank as opposed to looking at what they studied in practice. A last-minute drive and the field goal that came in kind of an inauspicious time because the Falcons could have taken a knee and won that game, Big C, your thoughts?
And I look at that in two perspectives. I look at it from a quarterback that's been on the roster for 13 years, and Matt Ryan, not just running out the clock. Take a knee. You're in field goal range, take a knee. Win the game with a field goal, you'd have had about 25 seconds to go on the clock.
Yeah.
He chose not to do that. He chose to hand the ball off to Todd Gurley. Running backs run when you give them the ball.
By
and he ran to the end zone. Unfortunately, he tried to fall before that. But people will say because Todd Gurley scored the touchdown and left too much time on the clock. You got a minute and 8 seconds on the clock, and you have a defense that knows what an offense is going to do.
Yeah.
They don't have any time off. All they're going to do is throw the ball. And you don't play tight coverage. You're playing a cover too deep and allowing them to throw everything underneath.
Yeah.
So I looked at Todd Gurley when I originally looked at this game and said, wow, you know, Todd scored to left too much time on the clock.
Yeah.
He did that twice when he was with the Rams. But you have a defense knowing that an offense has to go 75 yards in a minute and 8 seconds, and you can't play proper enough coverage to stop that. So when we look at the Atlanta Falcons and the 6 games that they've lost this year, Matt Ryan hasn't played the best, but that defense has been pathetic.
Yeah, it's the same. So are you saying, I want to make sure I heard you right, you're saying that Matt Ryan, instead of handing the ball to Gurley and people complaining that he did not fall down before the goal line, why not Matt Ryan just take a knee? But no one's talking about that, Big C. Your thoughts?
Just take a knee. You are a 13-year veteran. You got people touting you to say you should be a Hall of Fame quarterback. Even when the coach sent in a play from the sideline, you got an opportunity to audible say, that's not what we're going to do. We can win this game with a field goal and leave them less than 30 seconds on the clock.
Yeah.
We're right here at the 15-yard line. I'm just going to take a knee. That's a damn extra point.
Yeah.
And as a quarterback, if you're not salient enough to understand clock management, people always put that on the coach, clock management.
Yeah.
You got a 13-year veteran NFL quarterback who does not understand what clock management is. You get a call from the sideline all the time. You said, no, I don't like that play.
Right.
You audible it out of it. I'm just taking a knee running down the clock. That's all he had to do.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Everyone's blaming the running back, but he's not the one that snaps the ball. We'll take the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some more great play by some big-time players making big-time plays on the Big C Sports Podcast. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps you can follow Big C Sports, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. I want to thank also one of our sponsors. They did a commercial on the lottery, but they did it in Spanish. Español Poquito. Billy, I'm trying to understand it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't know any Poquito Spanish, okay?
It's all fair and love and war. It's all fair and love and war. Big C, maybe win the lottery. It'll be a great day. Big C, I'm telling you, I felt like I ate a little bit of crow. I should have had the Big C burger. It is a tasty burger. It comes with exotic meats, and if you understand how good it tastes, a lot of guys get them. I'm going to give the Big C burger to Tom Brady. The Buccaneers, the Battle of the Pirates down in Vegas. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers flew into Las Vegas and put up 45 points on the Las Vegas Raiders. Tom Brady threw 4 touchdown passes, 369 yards passing on the way to a blowout. He also had a rushing touchdown, I believe. He had a rushing touchdown to credit for, 4 touchdown passes, 369 yards. Scotty Miller was his top target, 6 catches, 109 yards. And Nelson Aguilar had 5 catches, 107 yards. Now, you did say, if you recall last Friday, that Gronkowski would score. It's just a matter of would he score any points in the game. I think he did both, Bixie. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you think about where Tampa Bay is now, you got to take your hat off to Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator.
Oh, he's amazing.
And I know when the season started, you said in your thoughts that you didn't think that Brady had anything left in the tank.
No.
Well, right now, Brady has 17 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions, which is not bad for a guy who's 43 years old and has his team in first place in the division.
Yeah.
But when you flip the ball over to that defense in Tampa Bay, and they're shutting down people. I mean, this is the same offense that ran up over 40 points versus the Kansas City Chiefs when you talk about the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden they ran up against a defense that wanted to hit them in the mouth, and they had to have a check of their agenda. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are scoring in every way that they need to score, Charlton. Running the ball, passing the ball. And not only that, they're going to get Antonio Brown in 2 weeks in the lineup.
Yeah.
So you think this offense is very potent now? Think about what they're going to be in a couple of weeks when they have a full complement of receivers. You get Evans and Godwin healthy.
Yeah.
Gronkowski is scoring on and off the field now. Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette are dominating the game on the ground. Tampa's going to be tough.
Yeah, they're tough. So, Big C, Todd Bowles used to be the head coach of the team called the New York Jets. I think at the most they had at least 6 wins before they said that's not enough. And now they can't find a win. And it's amazing with what he's doing on defense. People don't notice it as much as they should. Why did New York not notice what he's able to do with a good talent, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you got to realize Todd Bowles 1 year won 10 games with the Jets.
Yeah, that's right.
But then he had 2 faltering years, Charlton, based on injuries.
Yeah.
And they got rid of him. The thing about it, as a black head coach anywhere, college or professional, you got to win twice as many games as your white opponent. Otherwise, you're out of a job.
Yeah.
If you think about how well he's done defensively, Tampa's had one of the top defenses in the NFL.
Yeah.
The last 8 games of last year and the first 7 games of this year. And he won't get the praise that he deserves.
It's a shame, but I think it's just true. There is a color line, and it's just very blatantly there. So great job by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think Brady has thrown for the most touchdown passes in the NFL now. He and Drew Brees are going to be battling out throughout the year. But congratulations, Tom Brady definitely gets the Big C burger. But he may have to pry it out of the hands of Gronkowski, Big C, because he loves Big C burgers, if that makes sense to you. I want to take you across the East Coast. And I saw something that I didn't think I'd see. I saw the 49ers going there with several starters missing on defense. A couple of guys out on off. They didn't even have the best running back in Mostert. They put 33 points on the board against the New England Patriots, Bill Belichick's New England Patriots. They proved to be no match for the Patriots, Big C. Jeff Wilson rushed 3 touchdowns, 112 yards, and 3 carries, Big C. Cam Newton threw 3 interceptions and looked like he was not even in the game. I want to get your thoughts on the game, and I'm not making excuses for Cam Newton, but I think something's going on, and it's just my opinion. Your thoughts?
Well, I told you about Cam Newton last week, that Cam Newton does not operate with a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Cam Newton is trying to be too damn cute instead of just being a football player with some sense of urgency and hustle.
Yeah.
You never see Cam Newton hustle to the huddle. You never see him hustle to the line of scrimmage. It's all about being on his time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest problem with Cam Newton right now, is that he got a mental block. Cam Newton continues to perform like this for the next 2 weeks, the New England Patriots will release him.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick has no problem with that. I mean, he's not a big salary cap hit. He'll be on the street looking for a job. But the problem in New England is bigger than Cam Newton, even though he's playing terrible.
Yeah.
And he should think about his long career if he wants to continue playing in the NFL.
Yeah.
The New England Patriots had to replace 14 starters this year.
Yep.
And so I don't care what level of football that you're playing, unless you're Alabama, replacing 14 starters, you're not going to be successful. Look at LSU.
Yeah.
They won the national championship. They lost 14 players in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
They've lost all these games already this year. But in the NFL, you can't play backup and think that you can compete. New England has had different starting offensive line units in 5 games. I told you Jimmy Garoppolo was going to go back to New England and show them that he was a bona fide quarterback. You look at him statistically, he plays as good as any quarterback in the NFL. Does he have an inopportune mistake periodically? Yes, he does.
Yeah.
But he has shown that he is the captain of the ship in San Francisco, and when he's at the helm, they are the best team that they can be. Not the backup, but with him at quarterback, and right now he has them back in the divisional chase.
Yeah, he does have. He's not good throwing past 20 yards, but you gotta give him credit. But it wasn't. This is my opinion. Garoppolo is what he is, but their running game and they're solid. But Garoppolo doesn't play defense. They're pretty much a no-name defense. They don't have Bosa, which is their player of the year last year, Big C. Their defense held, Bill Belichick to 3 points. And people say, oh, it's Cam Newton, but when they brought in Stidham, he had an interception also. It's like something's up in New England. I don't know what it is, but I have never seen them play that bad.
You don't have an offensive line in New England. You don't have a running game in New England.
Yeah.
You don't have receivers. You tell me, when you can cover Julian Edelman with a linebacker,
and he's hurt,
what type of receiving core that you have in New England?
Yeah.
So Cam doesn't have any help, nor does Cam help himself.
Yeah. Now, that's very well said. You got to show some urgency. If not, they'll give you the pink slip, and you're too talented for that, Cam. That's just my opinion. Something about playing in the snow. I love making snow angels, Big C, especially the gold kind, if that makes sense to you. Golden snow angels. It's all fair level war. The defending Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs, they went up to Denver, and they put on a solid performance, beating up the Broncos easily, and they take care of the AFC West lead. And Daniel Sorensen and Tyrann Mathieu both recorded interceptions. Sorensen returned one for a touchdown. Mathieu had a fumble recovery. And then Tershawn Wharton also had a fumble recovery. Denver had 4 turnovers in the loss. You can't beat the Chiefs without having turnovers. They didn't help themselves, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, and I asked you earlier who was the best team in the NFL between Pittsburgh and Tennessee.
Yeah.
Kansas City Chiefs is not far off that ledger when you look at it. This is a team that scored 43 points, I believe it was, against Denver.
Yeah.
Denver came off 2 consecutive victories. They just beat up on New England the week before.
Yeah.
But when you think about the number of points the Kansas City Chiefs scored, Patrick Mahomes only had 200 yards throwing.
Yeah.
Not only that, Charlton, he was only on the field for 12 of the points that Kansas City scored.
Yeah.
So when you talk about a complete game played by the Chiefs, I think you saw it. Pringle had a 103-yard kickoff return.
Yep.
You talked about the defensive pick 6. So when you talk about the other aspects of Kansas City performing as well as they did, and Patrick Mahomes, a lot of pressure is not on him. He's almost like a baseball pitcher that didn't have to go deep into the game.
Yeah.
Think about how strong his arm is going to be later on in the year when he's not asked to throw the ball 45 times a game early in the year.
Yeah.
That their running game is solid. Le'Veon Bell made a couple of plays.
Yeah.
But Denver is the team I thought Denver would be at the beginning of the season. A team that's full of hope and not a lot of ability.
Yeah, and they got the great John Elway not doing the same thing lately. He started off strong in his career, but now he's not. He might need to step aside too, unless they want to get used to losing. 43-16 is a heck of a beatdown, Big C. I want to take you to a team that I thought would get right. You know, the Chargers, if they just had a decent kicker, Big C, this is a team that would only have maybe one loss. You know, they were ahead of Kansas City, lost that in overtime. They lost on the fluke play to Carolina. They had the lead over Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They also had the lead over the New Orleans Saints. And they were trying to let this one get away, but they wouldn't let it happen. Justin Herbert, out of Pac-12 powerhouse Oregon, threw 3 touchdown passes, completed 27 of 43 pass attempts, 347 yards in the win. He also had a rushing touchdown. Gardner Minshew, the second Big C, had 2 touchdown passes. And then James Robinson had 119 yards and a touchdown. I'm telling you, this Charger team, they're a lot better than their record, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, what's going to be very interesting, Charlton, is when it comes down to Rookie of the Year, when you look the way that Herbert is playing and Joe Burrow is playing in Cincinnati.
Herbert.
But the fear that I have is that people are going to start judging Anthony Lynn. They've had a whole host of injuries on defense with the Chargers.
Yeah.
And it has not allowed them to stop a lot of people. They've lost their top running back. You know, Williams has been banged up at receiver. So when I look at what Justin Herbert has been doing since inserted into the starting lineup, it's totally miraculous. But I think that the media is going to be calling that they need to get an offensive mind to coach Justin Herbert. The offense has been fine with the Chargers, as you talked about. They've had 3 games where they had the lead going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
But defensively, they have not been able to hold people.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a team that's on the rise. They're in a tough division with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're the second-best team. But if they can keep performing defensively, they potentially can make the playoffs. And Justin Herbert has been outstanding.
I'm telling you, Anthony Lynn's a better coach than John Gruden. You think about it. He has a lot of people out, and they really beat Kansas City, but they missed a field goal. They beat New England, but the defense let them off, and they had a running back injured in that game. They beat the New Orleans Saints down in the Dome, but they missed a field goal. And people say, yeah, but they lost. If you look at the fact, if they had a decent field goal kicker, this team would have 1 loss, Big C. Anthony Lynn should be safe if people can read between the lines at all fair and love and war. I want to take you down into the desert. I know you hate going into the desert unless you have your shotgun. For some reason, you always come back with something to eat, if that makes sense to you, Big C. The Arizona Cardinals, I said this team would push for a position in the NFC West, and I said that before the season started. Kyler Murray is amazing. They fought hard. They won a pivotal NFC West matchup in overtime. Kyler Murray, 34-48, 360 yards, 3 touchdown passes. Zane Gonzalez hit a 48-yard field goal. You hear that, L.A. Chargers? He hit a field goal. And they won the game in overtime over Seattle. It was a back-and-forth game, but they were down by 10 points with just about 2.5 minutes to play. Kyler Murray has the heart of a lion, even though he has a cardinal on his helmet, Big C, and they were able to come back and get the win. Your thoughts?
Well, I told you, if you go back to our Friday show, that Arizona would knock the Seahawks out of the unbeaten rank.
Yeah, you said that.
And if you look at this game had 2 of the most dynamic plays in the NFL this year when you think about it.
Yeah.
You know, I think everyone will talk about DK Metcalf running down.
Oh, he's fast.
You know, the safety after he picked off Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
He ran 90 yards to track this guy down and gave him a 10-yard start.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you think about hustle and not giving up,
yeah,
that's what professional athletes do. But Russell Wilson, is not often you're going to see him throw 3 interceptions and 3 touchdowns in a game. I think that's the 3rd time in his career that he has thrown 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
And they seem like a couple of lackluster balls that he didn't put a lot of emphasis in, Charlton, and throwing away. This is one of the few times that you'll ever see quarterbacks leading their team in passing and rushing in the same game.
Yeah.
We saw that with both Murray and Wilson. But this has been the Achilles heel of the Seattle Seahawks all year long.
Yeah.
Their defense. This team goes as far as Russell Wilson can take them because they can't stop a nosebleed right now on the other side of the field.
Yeah.
But we saw big plays all the way around from both of these quarterbacks, just dynamic playmakers. And this is what the NFL's new era is. You talk about Russell Wilson, 5'10".
Yeah.
Kyler Murray, 5'8", 5'9", with high heels on.
Yep.
That these 2 dynamic black quarterbacks have changed the face of the NFL's offenses.
Yeah, and ironically, media didn't want any of them, if that makes sense to you. It's all fair and level war. In the AFC standings, AFC East, the Bills are 5-2, the Dolphins 3-3, the Patriots are 2-4, and that's not a typo. The Jets are 0-7, and that's not a typo, Big C. In the AFC North, the Steelers go to 6-0, the Ravens are 5-1. What a great division. The Browns are 5-2, the Bengals are 5-1. In the AFC South, Tennessee Titans fall for the first time at home. They're 5-1. The Colts are 4-2. The Texans 1-6. The Jaguars 1-6. In the AFC West, defending Super Bowl champions are the Kansas City Chiefs at 6-1. The Raiders are pathetic at 3-3. I'm telling you, the Chargers are a much better team than the Raiders. Chargers 2-4. Broncos are 2-4. In the NFC East, the Eagles are 2-4-1. Washington is 2-5. The Cowboys are 2-5 and falling. The Giants are 1-6. In the North, Big C, NFC North, the Bears, they're playing in LA tonight. They're 5-1. The Packers are 5-1. The Lions have a 3-3 record, and the Vikings with your cousin is 1-5, Big C. NFC South, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they look really good, but again, they played the Raiders. They're 5-2. The Saints are 4-2. The Panthers are 3-4. And Arthur Blank and those Falcons are only 1-6, Big C. In the NFC West, Seahawks dropped to 5-1. The Cardinals rise to 5-2. The Rams are 4-2, and the 49ers are 4-3. Give me your thoughts tonight. The Rams are home. They have to keep looking in that rearview mirror. They're a good team, but they're 4-2. You have the 49ers that went across the country and had a big win over New England. You also have Arizona and Seattle that are neck and neck. The Rams can't look back. They have the big bear coming at them tonight, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, this is an interesting game. I mean, the Bears, when you look at them, they have one loss on the season. Nobody picked them to be in that position.
No.
You know, they won with smoke and mirrors and a great defense.
Yeah.
The Rams have never lost at SoFi Stadium. So can they hold on to their undefeated record at home? They play tremendous defense all year long.
Yeah.
This is a game tonight is which quarterback gets hot. We know that the Bears do not have a running game.
Nope.
That they've been winning with Nick Foles and with a lot of luck. The Rams' running game has been strong. Jared Goff has been so-so. He has not had that breakout performance yet this year.
No.
It's the night tonight for that.
Well, it better be the night for it, Big C, because they're looking at Seattle and also Arizona. That I think is the class of the West, but the Niners, because they beat New England, that's missing like 14 people, I don't give that as much of a win as it could. So I'm going to ask your thought before we head out, because you said something about Anthony Lynn. You talked about Todd Bowles having 10 wins at his height for the New York Jets, and they probably won't have 10 wins in the next 2 years if they don't change some things. The NFL, before the 2020 season began, Big C, there were 5 NFL teams that hired new head coaches. Matt Rule of the Carolina Panthers, Ron Rivera of the Washington Red Tails, some people call them the Washington football team, Joe Judge of the New York Giants, Kevin Stefanski of the Cleveland Browns, and then Mike McCarthy of the lowly Dallas Cowboys. One coach who was not hired as a head coach in the 2020 offseason was defending Super Bowl champion offensive coordinator, Kansas City Chiefs, Eric Bieniemy. Andy Reid told anybody listening that Eric Bieniemy, he was ready for that responsibility, and no one gave it the call. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, if I'm Eric Bieniemy, I wouldn't just take any job in the NFL. You know what type of players you've been coaching in Kansas City. Unless you can take a job with a team with the type of quarterback that you have in Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes,
yeah,
it would be futile to take a job in the NFL. You're setting yourself up for failure, and people say, well, you can coach anybody. No, you can't.
No, you can't.
Because the scheme that you run desires a certain type of quarterback and skill talent on offense.
Yeah.
And that one player in the NFL right now would be Deshaun Watson, as the player that's in need of a head coach, and that would be in Houston. But you have to rebuild the defense in Houston also. So if I'm Eric Bieniemy, I'm not just jumping at a job because a head coaching position presents itself.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sitting there looking at generational talent.
Yeah.
And if you look at what Mike Tomlin has done in Pittsburgh, he and Ben Roethlisberger has been there together his entire career in the NFL. And when you look at when Ben Roethlisberger was not available last year in Pittsburgh,
yeah,
what type of team did Cincinnati have? They had the same great defense, but they didn't have the type of offensive leader that Mike Tomlin has always had at quarterback.
Yeah, for the Steelers.
Even when you take the step and you look at Andy Reid, the head coach in Kansas City.
Yeah.
When he was in Philadelphia, he had Donovan McNabb. He and Donovan McNabb were synonymous. Went to 5 NFC championship games and 1 Super Bowl with Donovan McNabb.
Yeah.
Coming to Kansas City, He had Alex Smith, won the division 3 years with Alex Smith, groomed Patrick Mahomes, and he's been there every year with him.
Yep.
So when you have a certain type of skill set that you need at quarterback, it's not about just taking any NFL head coaching job.
Yeah, it's all fair and level, and it makes a difference. Even going back to the Tampa Bay game, Tom Brady's out of San Mateo Sarah High School and beat Derek Carr, who's out of Bakersfield Christian High School. And the week before, it was Tom Brady over Aaron Rodgers, who's out of Pleasant Valley High School up there in the Chico area. So he won the California Bowl, all those three great California quarterbacks. Big C, I just appreciate...
So which bowl did Sam Darnold in New York win?
He won the Apple Bowl, if that makes the Big Apple Bowl, if that makes sense. I told you about eating those apples from New York. That's how he got mononucleosis, and he hasn't been the same. Be careful of the New York bars. Some of those women, I think Hall & Oates said she's a man-eater. That makes sense to you, Big C?
Well, he doesn't know what he's doing, Charlton. I mean, when you got 8 yards of offense in a half, in 30 minutes, you got 8 yards of offense, and you said you're an NFL quarterback,
well,
your career, that's the one you need to be worried about.
Well, when you're dealing with man-eaters, they can sap your energy, if that makes sense to you. I want to jump to the world of college football, and then let's close out with the World Series, Big C. College football, number 1 Clemson, 47-21 over Syracuse. So whoever took the 48 points, they lost that, but, I mean, Clemson played okay, but Syracuse always plays them well, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence had outstanding games once again.
Yeah.
And they showed that they're the class of the ACC. There's nobody right now on the Clemson schedule that seems to be able to give them a solid challenge, Charlton. But at any point, anyone can have a hiccup during the season. But right now, Clemson seems to be clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, they're clicking on all cylinders. They look very, very good, especially in that conference. And I really don't think it's all that strong, and we'll find out when they get into the playoffs, Big C. Alabama, man, I hate when injured players play for free, and the coach said, well, he shouldn't have run the ball out of the end zone. I mean, Nick Saban, have a heart. Alabama, number 2 in the country, 48, Tennessee, 17. Alabama looks very, very powerful, but I feel so bad. Their best receiver comes up with a bad leg, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is what I'm talking about. You're grabbing players up by the shoulders instead of going in and tackling like you could do in the past, and this is what's causing leg injuries. Jerry Jeudy breaks his ankle because he was grabbed up around the shoulder pads, and as the tackler swung around his body, it locked his leg up underneath, just like with Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
But Alabama doesn't have any challenges left in the SEC. They are just a dominant juggernaut. Alabama will bring up another receiver. I don't think they'll miss much from Jeudy. And once again, Nick Saban kicks the butt of another one of his former assistants.
Yeah, I think that's 23 in a row now. Number 5, Ohio State, they got out to the horseshoe, which is no longer a horseshoe because they enclosed the stadium, but they get a pretty impressive win over Nebraska. Nebraska scored first. They went right down the field and scored as if they were playing under the days of the great Tom Osborne. Ohio State 52-17 over Nebraska, and some things don't change. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with the Star Wars original movies, and they had this thing called the Death Star.
Yeah.
That's what Ohio State is in the Big Ten. They're like a Death Star, where everyone goes to die.
Yeah.
And you knew going into this game that Nebraska was just hoping to be able to score.
Yeah.
They fortunately enough put 17 points up on the scoreboard, but they didn't have the talent to play with Ohio State. And Ohio State in their first game, they go over 50. They're just warming up.
Yeah, but remember the Death Star was destroyed by Luke Skywalker. They just need a Jedi Knight, so they got to be careful getting into the playoffs, Big C. Ole Miss with a 35-28 loss to Auburn. Oklahoma got out this night. They beat TCU 33-14. Notre Dame with a 45-3 win over Pittsburgh. Notre Dame looked like they opened up their offense just a little bit, Big C. Your thoughts?
Ian Book had his best performance of the season. Notre Dame has been sort of Jekyll and Hyde. 1 week they looked like a lackluster program. The following week they came out and poured it on Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh still hasn't gotten their starting quarterback back. But Notre Dame, up until if they have to face Clemson in the ACC, seems to have an easy road.
Easy road. And then Indiana 36-35 over Penn State in overtime. I don't think the quarterback scored, but that was a similar situation with the Falcons. And also with the Lions, the quarterback just take a knee and don't give the running back a chance to run it into the end zone. Final game on college football, Big C. Michigan, number 18 Michigan, 49-14 to 21. Actually, they beat number 21 Minnesota 49-24. Your thoughts, Big C? Your thoughts?
And this is the game that Jim Harbaugh needed. He needed to get off to a fiery start in an opening game, and he did that. You know, Michigan fans have been waiting anxiously for the past 5 years for Jim Harbaugh to put up those big signature wins against ranked teams.
Yeah.
And you think about Minnesota started out last year 10-0 before they suffered a loss. Will that same thing turn around this year for Michigan? Jim Harbaugh and the Wolverines desperately needed this conference win.
Yeah, they needed that conference win. Big C, sometimes we got to go outside of the country and figure out what happens to players. But I want to just congratulate in the UFC, Khabib decides he's going to retire after he had a tap out against Gaethje, Big C. So, and then he decides at 29-0 he wants to step aside from the UFC. For anyone who paid for that, hey, you know, you paid for it and you paid for it twice if that makes sense. I want to take you to the World Series because there's a song called I Love L.A. And I've heard it many, many moons ago by some good old boys down in Southern California. And you think about where the Dodgers stand right now. They're in Game 6 of the World Series, the 116th World Series that will be played Tuesday. It's Game 6 of the 116th World Series, and the Dodgers might score 6 runs, Big C. We don't want 666. That's not good unless you're in Donald Trump's backyard. But the Dodgers and the Tampa Bay Rays, one win away from another championship ring. I thought a similar moment came when Roberts decided he wasn't going to go with Jansen to close the game because he's starting to manage with his gut. I also thought it was disrespectful for Clayton Kershaw to act like an ass when Roberts was going to pull him out of the game, and he's sitting there trying to argue with his manager, and he's the reason they lost a couple of the other World Series. Just give me your opinion. I thought that was bad on Kershaw. He should have just said, hey, I'm a team player, and not try to act an ass at the mound, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you got to look at Kershaw in this scenario. He's been 2-0 in the World Series. I mean, he felt that he was pitching some of the best pitching that he's done since, you know, in this year.
Yeah.
And so no player wants to come out of the game. I mean, players get into that heated battle all the time with management. I mean, you agree to disagree. But the Dodgers played a well-rounded team game. I think that the biggest play in the game was when Kershaw delivered the pitch to home plate and picked off the Rays player who was trying to steal home plate.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't seen a move like that since, you know, Jackie Robinson did it in the World Series years ago.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the Rays tried to pull that same thing. And I think that was the turning point in the game, not the battle on the mound with Roberts and Kershaw.
Yeah.
But Kershaw is 2-0 here in the series. You know, he's never done that before. So the Dodgers right now are one game away from finalizing this. But, you know, I would like to see the Rays win this next game and push it into a 7-game series. I think that would only be fitting in this abbreviated season.
Yeah, spoken just like a man from the South. You want to see the South win again? They can't win. You guys lost way back in the day of the Civil War. Big C, it's all fair and level war. The Dodgers are a single win away from earning their first World Series title in 32 years, defeating Tampa Bay Rays 4-2 in Game 5 of the World Series at Globe Life Field. You think Tommy Lasorda will stop sweating Dave Roberts if he brings another championship to L.A.? Tommy Lasorda, he lost a lot of games. He didn't have as many appearances in the World Series as Roberts. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, you think the Dodgers have lost 3 of the last 4 World Series, Charlton. This is their 4th World Series in 5 years.
Yeah.
So they feel that they're due. It's been 32 years, 1980, last able to win that memorable I-5 World Series against the Oakland A's.
Yep.
So they're looking forward to an opportunity to close it out, but I think that the Rays are not willing to just lay down and give it to them.
Yeah, I mean, I love what we're seeing this time of year. We just finished crowning the L.A. Lakers as the NBA champions for their 17th World Championship, Big C. And now we have, you know, college football is back. The Pac-12 kicks off on Saturday. And I don't know if we have any 9 a.m. games, but I think that would be horrible to have college kids going out at 9 o'clock in the morning playing football just for some good old boys can get happy, Big C. But it's all fair and level more. Looking forward to some more football. There's some great things that happened over the weekend. I think the Steelers are the only undefeated team left in the NFL, as far as I believe. Your thoughts, is that true, Big C? I think it is. I think they're the only.
They're the only undefeated team. The Jets are the only winless team in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the NFL still has a long ways to go. The Steelers, I mean, when you think about it, they may have 2 games left on their schedule that they have to worry about. They have to play the Ravens twice, and we're going to find out what type of metal that the Steelers are made of. Can they contain that offense of the Ravens?
Yeah.
They know that they can shut down a running game. Lamar Jackson is going to have to be very efficient passing the ball if they expect to beat the Steelers.
Yeah, well, final story. The Senate confirmed Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. It's a 6-3 conservative majority now, Big C. And you know she's going to work at trying to get rid of Obamacare. She's also going to work at trying to get rid of a woman's right to choose. And there's a lot of other things that may be a problem for the United States of America. I think our hope, if I can say hope right now, is Chief Justice John Roberts. He was nominated by George Bush, and he's resisted Donald Trump's push to end, protections to sexual orientation, women's rights, gay rights, immigration rights, and civil rights. And we're going to see a lot of things happen. Joe Biden's going to win the election because he has a swing states, but they're going to challenge this election in the courts. People still got to get out and vote. Big C, I want to get your thoughts one more time. As a Southerner, if this kind of hits you in the belly, Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, what hits me in the belly is people's refusal to go out and vote during the midterm.
Yeah.
That determined the Senate. And when people say that their votes don't matter, then they're living the life that they're living right now in America.
Yeah.
We were going to have this pandemic regardless of who the president was. And as I tell you time and time again, it's the Senate that affects what happens that goes on in society in America. Because he was impeached in the House.
Yeah.
The Senate said, we're happy letting him do what he does because he's deflecting from the dirty work that we're doing.
Yeah.
So you have to understand, the Senate are the ones who appointed Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, not Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He can only nominate her. The Senate has approved 3 Supreme Court justices, not Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So when you understand how the layers of politics work, it is the Senate that has been the bastard that has destroyed America, not Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He's only been their puppet that they're out there dangling him on a string to keep you distracted.
Yeah, and they wouldn't even give President Obama a chance to do anything. He had to use executive order. Make sure you text the word VOTE to 26797. If you don't vote, then don't complain. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
We had a very competitive weekend in college and professional football. You said that the Pac-12 was going to get started this weekend.
Yeah.
They can't play enough games to qualify for the college football playoff. So once again, they're going to be on the outside looking in. I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They're never on the outside looking in. They're always standing on the front line taking care of business.
Always taking care of business. Big C, I really appreciate everything. I'm glad that America is starting to vote. It's always important. Big C, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, you can follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, as we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.